Hope. The parent of both faith and charity. According to the Bible, it's the light in a world that sometimes can be dark and a difficult place. Without hope, without that glimmer of faint light shining through even the bleakest of times, we die. Hope, our eternal flame, the smallest of its optimistic sparks, can ignite an inferno, create civilizations, defeat the deadliest of diseases, the longest of odds. It is the fuel of our faith and the foundation of our charity. But for hope to be real, it must be based in truth, honor. Without it, hope is nothing more than an empty wish. Truth, honor, virtues that today, right now, seem to be in very short supply. Truth, honor. Our history is chock full of brilliant men and women whose integrity and courage gave birth to this glorious republic. Men and women whose actions radiated hope throughout this great land of ours. But where have they gone? Where is George Washington or Sam Adams of our generation? Where is another Thomas Jefferson or Abraham Lincoln? What has happened to truth, honor? Too often today, conversations in the White House or the halls of Congress are absent of any mention of the founders, any reference to the mandates of the Constitution. Too often, the insight of Washington, Adams, or Jefferson is being equally substituted for the honorless rhetoric of Geithners, the Dodds, Wrangels, and Franks. Truth, honor, replaced with corruption, scandal, and deception. In America today, would anyone disagree that if we judge by the actions of our leaders, the light of hope is quickly dimming? Optimism, tougher and tougher to muster as the proud country of our founders, the Constitution, the American way, seems to be slipping from our grasp. But wait. Our hope is not lost. We, the people, are waking up. America is waking up. We now realize what fundamentally transforming America really meant. That the change we were promised is not the change that we need. That our founders created a republic and a document in the Constitution that has, does, and will stand the test of time. It's not transformation that we need, but restoration. And while we may not have been that giant beacon of hope like Washington or Jefferson to light the darkness and guide our path, we have each other, you, me, a growing army of Americans who have discovered that the flame of hope still burns in the hearts of the like-minded, Americans who still swell with pride when the stars and stripes are raised and our nation's anthem is sung before the cry of "Play ball!" People who believe America is not just a country but an ideal, not perfect, but better than any other, and founded in righteousness, truth, honor, courage. People who have hope that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness will be just as relevant for their children and grandchildren as it is for them today. Hope. It's the tiniest spark that can change a life. Country, a world. Make no mistake, it is time for change. It's time for the hope of a nation to trounce the partisan politics of Washington, D.C. It's time we choose our leaders based on who they are and what they stand for, and not what party they're from. It's time, right now, for true Americans to give strong, full-throated voice to the real hope of this country. Not the empty, false hope of a campaign slogan, but a loud cry for a return to our core, our foundation, Because, with all due respect, Mr. President, we're just not interested in fundamental transformation, social justice, spreading the wealth, universal health care, socialism, Marxism, or any other ism, or a series of stimulus packages that will rob our children of any chance, any hope of an America as it was intended. Restoration, Mr. President, is our hope. Before it's too late. Restoration of our values, the principles, the integrity, the honor, the freedom that defines who we are, who we have always been. America, the beautiful, the land of the free, the home of the brave, a shining beacon for all the world to see. That is our hope. That is the promise and hope of America.
When I first painted these paintings, not that particular one, but when I first painted Faith, Hope, and Charity that you see on the set every day, I didn't know what they were going to be used for. I didn't know what they were for. It was over the holidays. And I had to find somebody that represented hope. And I didn't know who represented hope. And then it came to me, what is hope? My good friend John Huntsman Sr., he is hope to me. He is hope. He, up on the hills here, up on the benches, he has his cancer institute. And right in front of it is the street is the Circle of Hope. Why? Why? Because they give you the truth there. You may not survive, but your best chance is to address it now. Truth is hope. If I go to a cancer center and they tell me, oh, don't worry about it, he's got lung cancer, it's just a little cough, I'm going to die. That's false hope. We have a challenge right now as Americans. We say over and over again, just tell us the truth. They say you can't handle the truth. They say, well, you'll never vote for him if the truth. Well, you have to be optimistic. Here's why I'm optimistic. I know who Americans are. I know our history. I know what we have built. I know in the darkest hour, every single time when it gets really bad, that's when the Americans show up. That's when we show up. That's when we say, all right, we'll fix it. That's where our hope comes from. My hope comes from you. My hope is based in our history. But we have to know how bad it is. And gang, I have news for you. It is awful. I've been saying this now for, I don't even know how many years, 4 years. I begged people. I remember it was a day of the stock market. It was like $13,998. And I had some clown on TV who was like, oh, we're looking at a Dow 20,000. I don't know why you're so down on it. And I looked right in the camera and I said, please, dear God, get your money out of the stock market. This is bogus. I can't, you did, God bless you. I can't tell you how many people come up to me now and say, Glenn, thank you. But I got hammered for it. Hammered. My ratings went down. Nobody wanted to watch it. I got news for you, gang. We all have to stand up and tell the truth. We hope that we're wrong, but we tell the truth no matter how uncomfortable it is, because that's the only thing that will save us. We're worried about deflation now. Most people don't even know what that is. Most people have denied that it was. The president just last week said, my policies have gotten us past the worst. Oh, dear God, help us. The worst is in front of us. It is in front of us. And I'm going to tell you in the last part of the message tonight who you are and why I'm telling you these things. You are going to feel overwhelmed in this next section. It's so funny that this section is called Hope, because you're going to get to the end of it, you're going like, okay, I think I'm going to go hang myself now. You're going to feel, you don't know, my wife, I swear to God, my wife will be in bed and she'll say, what are you thinking about, honey? And I'm like, honey, I just, and I'll go on for like 20 minutes, and then I'll say, good night, I'll turn off the light, and she'll be sitting up in bed. God bless her. God bless her. You don't know what it's like living with me. It's a nightmare. All right, let me tell you, there's two theories of thought. One theory is, hey, you know what? When things get bad, here's what you do. You spend your way out of it. Woo-hoo. There is something to be said for that in the short term, and in, just kind of prop it up just a little bit if you got something, and just pop the clutch a little bit, maybe. But not when things are spiraling out of control. Me personally, I say let it go. For one reason. I happen to know of a guy named, I don't know, Kondratiev is they spell his name in the history books like 14 different ways. He's a guy who was an economist for Stalin. And Stalin said, so, tell me, before I suck the blood out of everyone, tell me, which system is better, communism or capitalism? This dope apparently didn't recognize he was being asked that question by Stalin. I think the question is, whatever one you're for. He said, let me think about it. He did. He studied. He came back with what he calls the Kondratiev wave. To me, the Lord's house is a house of order. Everything is a pattern. Everything is a pattern. You see patterns in everything. See if you recognize this pattern as winter, spring, summer, and fall. He came back to Stalin and he said, you know what? I have an answer for you. Let me explain. I call it the Kondratiev wave. If you look at 1929, anybody heard of the 1920 Depression? Yeah, a few people. You never heard about it, you never read about it in school, I can guarantee you that. If you heard about it, you're either really super, super smart or you heard it from our show. The Depression of 1920 was just as bad as 29. But you don't hear about it. Why? Because Coolidge and Harding, they said, you know what we should do? Cut taxes and cut spending by 50%. And they did. They did. And a little thing called the Roaring Twenties happened. Oh, it was so horrible. It gave Americans the opportunity to have phones, refrigerators, and cars for the first time. So, 1920s, here we are, 1920s, things are really horrible because Woodrow Wilson. And it starts to come up in the 1920s. And then Hoover comes in and we start to do all kinds of programs. And what happens is it comes down because this is, have you ever heard of green shoots? Oh, the green shoots in the economy, they're great. Springtime, green shoots, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter. It's a cycle. And if you look at it, 1929, here comes the Great Depression, lasts a little longer because 1949, 46 to 49, it starts to come back up. 1969, we enter our summer period. And then 1997, we start coming down. 2008, we start to crash. Here we are now. And this relies on us now because we have come off this Kondratiev wave. But his theory was, what happens is it's just a cycle. It goes through periods. And there is winter when it seems horrible, seems like it will never end. You should live back east. It never ends. Everything is gray, everything is bleak, everything is awful. Awful, cold. And that is the depressionary period. That's the part where everybody feels like I believe we're about to feel. That's winter. And then all of a sudden you see one thing, a spark. It's called a green shoot. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at that. And it takes off, and that spreads all across the economy. And it's a time of optimism. You're like, oh my gosh, it's a time of ideas. It is in time, 1949, what were we doing? We were building cars, we were inventing, we were building homes, we were building refrigerators. It was a time of expansion. The same as the 1920s. It is spring. Then you reach a period of summer, and arrogance sets in because you've had spring and now you're in summer. Have you ever gotten to the point in summer you're like, oh, geez, this is never going to end? It's a summer, the period of arrogance, where we're America. Nothing will stop us now. We cannot fail. It will always be sunshine. Summer. And then you start to see the leaves change. And somebody says, wow, it's going to get cold. The leaves are changing. No, it will always be summer. No, but all the leaves are changing. There's something wrong with the trees then. We should dig them all up and put them in greenhouses. No. You should recognize that the time to prepare is coming. You should prepare for cold weather. Because what's happened is we had this great growth, and then we became arrogant, and we made mistakes because we were arrogant. Things change. Things that were good ideas no longer work anymore, and they start to shimmy apart. And what happens? This is what he told Stalin. The capitalist system is much better because in that fall, what we do here in a communist country is we try to prop it up. And so we take all these bad ideas and we push them back up with money. Where the capitalists let it fail and reset. And when it resets, it takes all of the crap, all of the bad stuff that wasn't working anymore and gets rid of it. And there's a fundamental transformation of the economy, not the system, of the economy. And then the green shoot happens. He said, in the end, capitalism will win. Stalin's response, he killed him. He killed him. This, I believe, is true. We are now in the greenhouse taking all of the trees and trying to convince ourselves that these trees should still be growing. Quick, more fertilizer, more fertilizer. Let the trees go to sleep. They need to. It's natural. We keep putting stimulus money into the system, trying to push this up, trying to bend nature. It's not going to work. And in the end, this time, because there is no way, as David Barton, I swear to you, if anybody has rope, please take it away from your neighbor. Because when David Buckner comes out and he starts talking about how much our debt is and what it really is, where does this go? Where does this go? Now, there's one other thing I want you to know, and I've talked about it on television before. No one will dispute it. No one will do anything about it. It just is there. And I wonder why. Because it's an awfully darn good theory, and everything points to its being true. You've heard of mutual assured destruction. What was that? Well, the first idea in the Cold War was, and I swear to you, read about the doomsday device. When you read about I always heard about it growing up, doomsday device, it would blow up the entire planet. And they're like, that's ridiculous. The scientists really thought that was a good idea. That what they would do is they would put explosives into the earth. And then they would put some computer system in, and there would never be a problem with computer systems. They'd put some computer system in, and they would put the parameters in, that if this country did this, this country would do this, and this, and this, and this, and it would cross a certain line, and it would just blow the earth up. And so we would all be afraid of doing anything wrong because, well, the earth would be blown up. I'm glad we opted out of that one. Instead, The offshoot was mutually assured destruction that left it in the hands of man. Oh, that's a much better plan. We had missiles. If they fired these missiles, we'd fire back. We'd blow up the planet. How many times over could we blow up the planet? Mutually assured destruction. The idea was they would never launch because they knew we would launch and we'd all die. Tragedy and Hope. It's a book by Carol Quigley. I love this. They call him a conspiracy theorist, but yet he's the guy who got Bill Clinton in as a Rhodes Scholar. He has consulted, I don't know how many presidents in his day. He was at George Washington University and Harvard University. He wrote a book, and this is the only period in his life that they say he was a conspiracy theorist. He wrote a book called Tragedy and Hope. It was in 1962. He wrote this book, and he said, there is a global world order, and I just want to let you know because I've been part of it. And here's what it is. The tragedy is war. The hope comes from global framework because we can't blow up the earth. The better way, instead of having mutually assured destruction, is to have mutually assured economic destruction. And here's what it was. He said, we've tied all of our economies together. He said in 1962, from here on out, you will never see an all-out war ever again. He said wars will become wars and they'll be fought for a while, but there will never be a real victor in any war. They'll just kind of peter out and they'll just kind of go away, be dragged out. The reason why no one will fight it full on anymore is because we're all tied together economically. And if one country destroys the other country, well, that economically affects the other countries. And so the world has a pressure to keep those countries. You can punish, but don't knock them out. Okay? Makes sense? Especially when you see what's happening now over in Greece. This is where the horror show could come. Because he talked about mutually assured economic destruction that would tie all of our economies together and hold them together by making everybody afraid their economy. But they never talked about economics. They only talked about war. They never said, well, what happens if there's a bug in the system? What happens if the United States goes crazy with greed and so does the rest of the world? And what happens if honor goes away? What happens if there's people intentionally trying to screw this system up? You knock out one big economy, you knock out Europe, it knocks out America, it knocks out China, and it's a domino. It's as dangerous as if we would have wired the planet with explosives and then hooked it up to a computer, because that's what we did economically. All of our computers are tied into each other. All of our loans are tied into each other. So when the dominoes start to fall, America cannot fall by itself. Europe cannot fall by itself. China cannot fall by itself. As these regions start to fall, the whole thing falls. The idea that I have had, and I think Singapore is a good example of what's happening. It is true. People right now, I know people with tons and tons of money. I had a guy in my office the other day who said, Glenn, we're in trouble. He's a guy who has billions of dollars. He has, I don't know how many thousands of employees. He works with the stock market. He said, Glenn, I have a floor in a huge Manhattan high-rise. It's empty. He said, I don't want to hire anybody. Because if I hire them, I don't know what New York City is going to do with their taxes. I don't know what they're going to do with their regulations. I don't know if I should move my employees into New Jersey. I don't know if I should move to Texas. I don't know if I should move to London, Singapore. I don't know. There are billions and billions of dollars right now that people put in their pockets. Companies are flush with cash. Banks are flush with cash, but everybody's holding on to them because the whole system is unstable. So how do we get out of this? If you want to get out of this, you have to come up with something that isolates your country and spits it out of the destruction. What is that? Stability, number one. Our laws must be stable. Our country must be stable. Civil unrest. Why do you think the communists right now are starting to stir everything up? They need civil unrest for economic destruction to happen. We must be a stable nation. The other things that must happen, You must be able to count on the laws. You must be able to count on the economic laws. We just passed this stimulus bill. You think the health care bill was bad? That's nothing compared to what they just did to us. Nothing. They control every dollar, the flow of every dollar in the U.S. now. Wait until you see what that's going to do to us. It's the exact opposite. By having low taxes, by having a stable government, by having a stable atmosphere, by creating a place to where you say, man, you got a lot of money and an idea, come on over here. We'll build jobs. We'll build that product for you. And if it works, it's great. If it doesn't, you're on your own, Jack. But live within the laws. And if you have a great idea, people are looking for a place to put their money. America has always been that place. It's Singapore now. Singapore. Canada is more stable than we are. No offense to Canadians, but Canada? The hope first comes from the truth. I'm going to introduce you to a doctor who's going to tell you we have cancer. But have no fear. Stand beside the truth. Stand behind the Lord and use the truth of God as your shield. This is His country. He will devour the problems. We just have to be good, decent people that know what the truth is. David Buckner is a very good friend of mine from New York City. He's going to tell you the truth. David Buckner. David just published a new book called Permission to Think, and I wrote a blurb for it because he's the guy who said to me, you think out of the box, and I can't get people to think that way. He just wrote a new book, Think Out of the Box. Teach them how to think out of the box.
Thanks, buddy. It's truly an honor and privilege to be home. From one who left Salt Lake City in 1995, my father asked me as I moved to New York City, when are you coming back? And I had no idea it would be in this fashion. So to my father, I'm home. It's good to be here. The world has changed. And as has been suggested, I don't pretend to present myself as Dr. Doom, but there's a lot we need to understand where we are so we know where to go and what to do. I ask you as you think about this, what you think about our country. I'm going to ask you to pull out your phones, those of you who have been texting questions and other such things, and answer very simply. As I look at the economic and financial future of our country, and I do this before the speech, clearly not at the end, I'd like you to answer by virtue of texting. If you are optimistic and hopeful, text HOPE1 to 83733. If you have a sense that you're a bit pessimistic and discouraged, text HOPE2 to 83733. And with those phones, if you are neutral and unsure at this time, go ahead and text 3 to 83733. I want to get a sense. We've done this in Orlando and Phoenix. Got an idea as to where people think they really are. You might be amazed. I mean, here you are in the mountains. You have the beauty of the mountains, the best skiing in the world, and an amazing populace that comes by virtue of industry, even that very beehive which represents this state. So as we think about it, the question is quite sincere. How do you feel we're really doing? Where are we at this time? As you think about this, I would challenge you to be thoughtful. Some of the words that have been provided by those who, well, we look to now as those great leaders. All mankind is divided into three classes. Those that are immovable, those that are movable, and those that move. Benjamin Franklin. The question I have for you after we end today, where do you fall? Immovable, movable, or will you be a mover? As we consider our journey, I would challenge you to think about our experiences here. What do we do with this? Is it simply an event that we come together, pontificate on important issues, and move on down the road back in that comfort land where the white picket fence sits out in front? Or do we change? As you have learned from Dave Barton and Glenn Beck, hope is born of faith. It starts with that foundation of confidence, things that are not seen, but are truly held dear to be known. Ronald Reagan said, so with all the creative energy of our command, let us begin an era of national renewal, and let us renew our faith and our hope. It is my hope and desire, by understanding where we are able to move forward from that faith to the concept of hope. But we must know the truth. We have to begin with what is. Hope what you please. But remember that hope without truth at the bottom of it is an anchor without a holdfast. A groundless hope is a mere delusion. So we start with truth. We start with where we are. Consider where we are, just this 20-year journey to what we would call, technically, from the financial world in which we work and live, bankruptcy. The world has changed in just the last 20 years. Start with principle number one, the United States debt. In 1990, the United States owed $3.2 trillion, and at that point in time, $1 trillion was a lot of money. Unfortunately, that has become, well, quite small compared to where we are today. Fast forward just 10 years. To the year 2000, one decade later, the United States owed $5.6 trillion, an increase of 75% over the previous decade. I do remember, and I dare venture most of you would, thinking that was, well, a travesty, until we fast forward another 10 years. The year 2010, by the end of this year, the United States will owe $14.4 trillion. $14.4 trillion. 157% increase. The trajectory of this debt is, well, we can't fathom. And the distance we know not. This borrowing, principle number one, is unsustainable. We can't do it. At some point in time, the bankers say, enough, I can't do it. I'm not going to give you any more money to buy our stuff. Which leads us to the second principle on this journey to bankruptcy. The United States is spending a lot. We know this. One might be interested in knowing that we've lost money 16 of the last 20 years. What business could survive in losing money 16 of 20 years? And yet we've raised taxes. It's not like we're not collecting enough. We've doubled our taxes. Our revenue has increased twice. We've doubled it. Unfortunately, we've tripled our spending. Hey, I'm doing well. I just got a salary increase. I've doubled my salary. Yeah, that's great. But have you looked at your checkbook? You've tripled your spending. Yeah, pay no mind. I've doubled my salary. We can't do that. We recognize that going forward with tripling, our government can't keep this trajectory, the distance between our spending and our collections. And yet what I find just mind-boggling is we still retain a AAA rating. I want to be in that business. Let me lose money for 16 years. Let me triple my spending and double my income, and I'm still AAA. Buy my stock. It's unfathomable where we are. We cannot go forward as this sort of spending. It's unsustainable. Number three, as we look at it, our road to bankruptcy takes us in a world in which we are increasing the risk. You see where we are in terms of our borrowing. Everybody can run around saying, you know what, interest rates are really low. Interest rates are really low. Yeah, they are. That's supposed to entice borrowing it. Well, it has. The United States owes interest on $14.4 trillion. We right now have the lowest interest rate. But if you increase the interest rate just that 1%, there's $144 billion we're going to be paying in interest. 1%. I don't know how many of you are thinking back to the period of time in which interest rates were a little bit higher than that. But let's go back to 1980. I mean, I remember those days. I remember going down to the Chevron and buying gasoline and seeing lines of cars. I remember a period of time where relationships with the Middle East, well, they weren't so great. And there were wars in places, and it really doesn't seem like it's changed much. If we were to go back to that, if we go back to the 16% interest that we had in 1980, we would be spending $2.3 trillion in interest alone. Now, those trillions may not seem to be too much until you realize that this is equal to 2 times our entire United States debt in 1980. And not only that, it's equal to all the taxes we're going to collect this year in this country. Can you imagine if the interest rates go up, where all of the taxes would go solely to interest? And yet, folks, our interest rates are at the lowest levels in history. They can only go up. Unfortunately, as we look at this, we recognize that these low interest rates, well, they're unsustainable. So we live in challenging times. And fourth, we look at the promises we made. And you know what? We make promises. My father taught me an important principle. It's one that I strive to live. It's tough. Your word is your bond. It means you will do what you say. And as Americans, that has been our mantra, our motto, our slogan, our standard. And yet, I don't know that we can anymore. To pay $14.4 trillion to those people who have, well, we borrowed money. They've been our lenders. We owe them to begin with. Add to that our obligations, our commitments. We have commitments of $6.6 trillion for our Social Security obligations alone. Now, that's not even the largest. If you start to go forward and look at those bigger balloon payments that come with regard to Medicare, we owe, when we have promised to those very people who have put their pieces into the pie, $36.3 trillion in Medicare obligations. I don't know if you're doing the math with me on this, but we're at $57.3 trillion in promises. Just from today. This is not sustainable. And what does it say to you and I? Each of us as individuals, every man, woman, and child promises to pay $184,000. It's not sustainable. We can't keep our promises to pay. Well, there are some that are betting on the future and saying, as Glenn suggested, you just keep spending, it'll all work it out in the end. Unfortunately, I fear that it can't. An esteemed religious leader of mine once said, there is a portent of a storm on the horizon. This was said at a time where, well, there was a robust economy, and yet we saw a little faltering. When we looked closely, there was a focus on self-reliance, prudence, preparation, being appropriate, living within your means. It reminds me, though, in the world in which we live, and I love the city in which I live, and I love the people in New York City, but there are many that I work with and others that I see, and students that inquire that will often say, well, we can simply will our way through it. Shouldn't be a problem. We can simply say, we're America. Who would ever let America fail? It's almost as if, well, you go back to the old story of the captain of a ship in the North Atlantic who has the mighty Navy behind him. Confidently, he says, when a target is announced in front of him, move it out of the way. The target responds, I'm not moving, you move. And there's a standoff. And you see that these stubborn targets, in some cases, cannot simply move. They can't be ordered away.
Again, this is the USS Montana requesting that you immediately divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. Over.
Please divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid collision.
This is Captain Hancock. You will divert your course. Over.
Negative, Captain. I'm not moving anything. Change your course. Over.
Sir, this is the USS Montana, the second largest vessel in the North Atlantic Fleet. You will change course 15 degrees north, or I will be forced to take measures to ensure the safety of this ship. Over.
This is a lighthouse, mate. It's your call. Hello? Captain? I think he's gone. Fair enough.
My students love that because they're set up for it and they're, whoa, dude, you can't move the lighthouse. Really? You think? Economic facts are stubborn. You can't just sidestep the economy. You can't sidestep the laws of supply and demand. You can't sidestep the incentives. It was interesting as Glenn and I were about a year ago bantering through the challenges here. I had an experience I'd rather not live on this stage. And we were talking about the caustic effects of this when I dropped to the ground. And he said, whoa, first time anybody ever passed out on my show. I still get people say, are you that guy? No. We're looking in troubled times. There are those challenges, and I bring one to your attention as he's identified it. We face the challenges of this healthcare situation. Ask anyone, do you think that everybody should be provided with healthcare? My answer, sure, absolutely. I believe that everybody should have the opportunity to be well. I believe everybody should be, I do in my heart, but there are some stubborn economic principles that, well, you can't just legislate the ability to get there. You have to think about the consequences. So this is what I would call the healthcare hurricane. Promises, right? I promise you we're going to lower the prices. Absolutely, we'll lower prices. Yes, sir, we'll give you low prices. Question, how? Are you going to lower costs? I was sitting on a chairlift up here in Park City, Utah this last year, skiing up there at a wonderful ski resort called Deer Valley. Sat next to a doctor from New York City. I said to her, so what do you think about this whole healthcare situation? She said, well, it's just the right thing to do. I think everybody should have healthcare. I said, oh, that's great. I said, so how are we going to pay for it? I don't know. We'll figure that out. I said, so are you going to take they're going to give you lower costs, right? She says, yeah, they're going to make it affordable for everybody. I go, you're a doctor in New York City? She said, yes. I said, so clearly you're going to lower your costs. Well, no, I can't do that. That would be ridiculous. My malpractice insurance is expensive, and I don't make enough as it is. I said, so if you're not going to lower what you charge, and we're going to lower what people pay, who's going to pay the difference? Her answer? Oh, the government will figure it out. I was very nervous. If she's my health care provider, the last thing I want is that. So we look at it, that's one of those economic principles. If you increase the patients, you have 36 million new people, but you're not putting new doctors out there. I don't know what word to use. You want to use shortage? You want to use ration? I don't know. But I'm telling you, economically, you can't put 36 million more people into doctors' offices with no new doctors. It doesn't work. Economically, you will create shortages. We see that if you tax now, I love this one. Let's add up all the taxes for 10 years, all the money we take in. But let's only show what we spend over 6 years. And guess what? It's deficit neutral. Isn't that great? Garbage in, garbage out. We're mortgaging the future. And then probably the challenge that I feel is the fact that we're making promises we can't keep. We got $36 trillion already for Medicare. How can I say, yeah, but we're going to find efficiencies there and then add 36 million more people to it? It can't work. In the end, you and I and our children are going to pay the price. We have to be responsible. We have to be thoughtful. We have to figure out what we can do to change the direction. We must never despair. Our situation has been compromising before, and it changed for the better. So I trust it will again. If difficulties arise, we must put forth new exertion and proportion our efforts to the exigencies of the times. George Washington. This is one of those times. You're spending a day here is just part of it. It's just the beginning. We have to figure out what to do to be different, to think differently, to act differently. It changes now. Where we are is not who we are. We are Americans. That doesn't entitle us, but it does enable us. We are at a crossroads, and today's the day. Just over 48 hours ago, 2 o'clock in the morning, on my way to St. Louis. Driving in the middle of the night to catch the flight to get here. I stood on the banks of the Mississippi looking over down at the lights of a small town, Keokuk, Iowa. I stood there on a corner that was profound in not only American history, but much of the history of your ancestors here. On a corner that led Main Street in the middle of town and a street they called Parley. As I stood there thinking about the events that had taken refugees, left the East Coast and moved their way west, arriving here in this very valley, I looked toward that very Main Street with brick homes, imagining the warmth, the comforts of life, all that had been built up. And then I looked toward the Mississippi, toward an empty lane, and imagined in February of 1846, when many of my ancestors, with wagons and carts, had to make the choice. The comforts of Main Street, the complacency and ease of today, or the uncertainty of tomorrow. And I saw there, appropriately titled this very way, Trail of Hope. I reflected on that and I wondered where we are today. Are we confident in our trail of hope? We're at a crossroads, folks. We have a journey. We have to determine where we're going to go and how we're going to get there. We have to figure out what are the steps that will move us down that path. Find it interesting as we have this opportunity to think about things differently, that we recognize some of the greatest companies in America were created this way. In the winter of 1911, at a sales meeting in Dayton, Ohio, Thomas J. Watson Sr., who had found IBM, declared the trouble with us, the trouble with everyone, is that we don't. And then turning to the easel paper, he wrote with the blue crayon 5 letters, THINK. I suggest that we adopt the word think as a motto or slogan, keeping it before us at all times in as many different ways as we can. And that is my challenge to you today. We must think our way out of this. We must figure out ways in which we can innovate. We cannot be like those individuals who simply complacently stand there doing nothing when it seems logical that it's ideas that could carry them forward.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is there?
Yeah, we show these videos in our classes. I wish you'd all come to the university. We'd have a good time, right? There is more to do. You don't sit back and say, well, there's nothing to do. I think it's just go back and go to work. No, there's a lot we can do. We have to start first with our path. The path out of darkness begins with those, and these are you folks. This is all of us. Exasperating, persistent individuals who are constitutionally incapable of capitulation. We must create our trail of hope. And it is dark and it is cold. But there are opportunities. And today we share some of those with you. H, it starts first at home. It begins now. It begins today. You have binder, you have materials, you have things that you're writing notes on. Those materials that you're writing notes on, the things that you're thinking about, write them down, put them in your journal. Go home and teach them. Invite people to understand what you're learning. Even if it simply says, here's what I thought about while I was sitting there. We've got to begin. How many small business owners do we have out here? You make up this country. If you look at what you do, you represent 99.7% of all employer firms. Not only that, you have generated 64% of new jobs over the past 15 years. You employ just over half of all U.S. workers. It starts at home, building businesses. As Glenn suggested, it's innovating. It's creating. Americans are builders. They're inventors. They're innovators. We no longer need to sit back and create illusory financial instruments. We create products. We have ideas. It begins at home, which brings us to the second part of where hope can be found. It's coming to ownership of it. We don't simply say, well, I'm going to elect somebody and they'll just take care of it like my good doctor on the chairlift. We take control of that process. Let me help you consider just a few economic principles that I think seem fairly obvious, but we need to take ownership of this. First and foremost, we've got to pay down debt. We've got to get to a point where we recognize that there's going to be some challenges. We're going to have to figure out how do we create things such that people will want to buy things so that we can pay down that debt. I'm telling you something, there's only 3 ways to pay down debt in this country. One, they're either going to have to tax more, they're going to have to spend less, or they're going to have to, well, throw an inflation party, which is the dirty little secret. There's always the potential that if you flood the economy with cash, well, then they'll just collect more money off of taxes. The reality of it is none of that is, well, appealing for you and I. We have to consider the fact that when they talk about hey, just let me do it. Just let me do it. I'm the government. I can take care of it. That's not the way it works. You don't get rid of a monopoly by creating a monopoly. The government is a monopoly. And so when they say, let's just have a single payer system, it will make it more efficient. I believe in efficiency of scale. I get that. But I'm telling you today, but I'm taking it to those people who simply have, well, quite candidly, not run businesses. For 16 of the last 20 years, they haven't really had to make a payroll. They haven't figured out how to break even. I'm not sure making them the sole provider of all goods and services is a very good plan. And in recognizing that, we have to own it. We have to recognize that we can't be on both sides of the equation. I find it fascinating. My esteemed senators from my state, they're very protective of our state, but they say things sometimes that are perplexing. In one interview, I heard from elected officials suggesting that we need a more livable standard, a more livable wage. So let's raise the minimum wage. Now, let's be honest. I want more money. Absolutely. But if you mandate an increase in minimum wage, 2 things occur. First and foremost, you've raised it such that an employer, a small business, has to say, let's see, what do I do? Do I raise my prices and lose customers, or do I get rid of people? I have to lay people off. And who are they going to lay off? The most skilled or the least skilled? If they're paying the same, they're going to get rid of the least skilled. You increase the minimum wage, you hurt people who need it most, the least skilled. And not only that, number 2, the very same year that we're raising the minimum wage, we're building a fence to keep people out. I find it fascinating that we create an incentive to draw them over and then build a fence to keep them out. You want to make sure that we don't have illegal issues on the border, get rid of the minimum wage. Nobody will come over. It's an economic principle. And then the bet. Here is what I find most fascinating. The bet on too big to fail. You've heard we're really trying to make sure that no company out there would have so much influence or so much power that they, by their failure, would hurt us. We've got to make sure that we're safe there. So we're going to regulate banks to assure they're not too big to fail. It's fascinating when I ask my colleagues, I say, the United States hasn't made a lot of money. We're not doing real well on the payment of debt. What keeps China or Japan or others from foreclosing on us? And, they never would. They never would. Why? Well, it would hurt their own economy. We're just we're too big. I said, isn't that a fascinating dialogue we're having? The very thing that we condemn in our own economy is the very thing we're betting on for our survival. Too big to fail? We're betting on it as Americans. That those bankers, those lenders won't foreclose on us. This is problematic. As we look at ownership, we have to figure out where truly do we lie. It is critical to know that we as Americans, as individual consumers, we know what we want. We don't need somebody to tell us, trust me, I know what I will consume. Let's have inventors and creators and innovators provide exactly what I want. Americans are insightful, they are innovative, and they are enlightened. It isn't just a group of people out there saying, well, I'll vote that way. No, we're thinkers. We build, we create. We must take ownership. And then hope requires of us greatness. It requires of us to be engaged. It requires of us to be prepared. To be prepared, may I challenge you to avoid these 5 financial, well, I'll call them fallacies. Hope requires this preparation. Do not let anybody tell you it's never happened before. In July of 2005, we had a gentleman who now runs the Federal Reserve. Well, he said something quite interesting about our housing situation.
Worst case scenario. So we have so many economists coming on our air and saying, oh, this is a bubble and it's going to burst and this is going to be a real issue for the economy. Some say it could even cause a recession at some point. What is the worst case scenario if, in fact, we were to see prices come down substantially across the country?
Well, I guess I don't buy your premise. It's a pretty unlikely possibility. We've never had a decline in house prices on a nationwide basis. So what I think is more likely is that house prices will slow, maybe stabilize, might slow consumption spending a bit. I don't think it's going to drive the economy too far from its full employment path.
I don't think it's going to drive the economy from its full employment path. That makes me a little nervous. You don't let anybody ever say, it's never happened before, it's not going to happen again. Just can't be so. You never let anybody say it's always been done this way. I don't care who you want to blame. I don't care which administration. I'm apolitical. I'm an economist. I think in the economic terms. I just want to say, don't tell me, well, you know what? It's always been done this way. Let's do it that way. You can't allow everyone to suggest, you can't allow everyone to suggest that it's okay because everybody's doing it. China's doing it. Japan's doing it. India's doing it. I'm not sure everyone else is doing it. It's a good answer. And then the fourth, as we look, we have to recognize that with each of these challenges, and they are financial fallacies, the experts, well, I'm not sure what the experts say. I found it fascinating that many suggest we shouldn't challenge them. The experts will take care of us. You know what an expert is. Ask me tomorrow and I'll tell you again who it was today. We start the challenge of recognizing that we've got to better prepare. My biggest concern is when they say, just don't worry, trust us. We'll take care of it and we'll take care of you. Can you imagine any of the founders saying something like, well, we don't need to read. We don't need to know what's in the legislation. We don't need to understand what's in the bill. We'll pass it. Once we passed it, we'll let you know. Can you imagine such a dialogue? I can't imagine in a time in which those things would occur. Americans cannot and will not delegate their divine destiny. I challenge us not only to think.
Pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it away from the fog of the controversy.
Yeah, I want to get away from the fog of the controversy. No, I want to read it first. I cannot imagine anything that would help us without getting more information. I encourage you to take today and go forward. Be educated, enlightened, be engaged. From knowledge to action, we offer as much as we can. For more information, please join us. We're getting together in a forum of dialogue. If you want more ways in which we can communicate one with another, text HOPE, just HOPE, to 83733. Visit us. I've set up a website for my students. I started answering questions there. It's spun out of control a little bit. BucknerOnBusiness.com. Read Permission to Think. We want to encourage the thought process. I want to inspire people to be enlightened and to ask more questions. We've been doing with Beck University some seminars and some programs. 4,000 people get on all at once and they're asking questions. 3,000 questions come. There's so much desire for light and knowledge. We invite you to join us there. We want to encourage you to go forward because hope is the answer. We have to choose our direction. We have to recognize it starts here at home. We have to take the ownership. We have to properly prepare. We have to engage. There must be action. Hope is born of faith. It is grounded in truth. It is expressed in action. Just over 30 years ago, or almost 30 years ago, we heard this during an inaugural address. I hear the voice as it comes back to us today, the importance of listening.
The crisis we're facing today does not require of us the kind of sacrifice that Martin Treptow and so many thousands of others were called upon to make. It does require, however, our best effort and our willingness to believe in ourselves and to believe in our capacity to perform great deeds, to believe that together, with God's help, we can and will resolve the problems which now confront us. And after all, why shouldn't we believe that? We are Americans. God bless you and thank you. Thank you very much.
The very nature and spirit of a revival invokes deity with God's help. We are Americans. That does not entitle us, but it should enable us. As we go forward, I ask you now this question. What will you be? All mankind is divided into three classes. Those that are immovable, those that are movable, and those that move. May we today move forward. Thank you very much. Dr. Doom. Thank you.
I have to tell you, I don't know if you guys feel uplifted yet. I mean, even after that. Oof. But it's really, truly an amazing, it's an amazing experience. The people that are working so hard backstage and on stage really believe in what we're telling you. And I saw David tear up here a minute ago when you guys were applauding, and I know that it is the same exact feeling that I have all the time when people actually come and you will listen, and we're so desperate to get this information out. Now it's up to you to take the information and spread it to others and make sure that you are helping others, because there's going to be nothing but lies coming their way for a very, very long time. Stu and Pat are here, and they've been monitoring the internet, and they have questions for, I guess, me. It should be really for David. But what do you have that's coming in?
Well, either you or David could answer this one. It is from Kenneth, who asks, where does the $100 trillion number of debt and obligations that Glenn frequently talks about come from? What's the breakdown?
Well, as you looked at the 50-plus trillion, the 57 trillion I talked about, that's where we are today. If you start looking at obligations and commitments and you put any association with population increase, you start to make projections, which is why I took the numbers that I took, which are fairly conservative numbers. And by the way, the numbers that I shared with you didn't include healthcare. They didn't even include the recent legislation. So when we look at the trajectory, the numbers become astronomical out there.
It was $109 trillion the projected by 2030 or 20, I don't remember what it was, but it was $109 trillion. After healthcare, it became $139 or $134 trillion. There's absolutely no way to pay for it. None. Okay, I was happy.
Dr. Doom. Rubini, watch out.
I love it. Did you see what Rubini said? Rubini is this, he's known as Dr. Doom. He's the only guy I remember, like 3 years ago, he said something, and it was like Christmas Eve. And he said something overseas that, the economy is coming apart at the seams and we're headed for a giant crash. And it was the first guy that I saw that actually was saying what I believed that had any credibility. And it was so funny because it was Christmas Eve, and I wrote to one of my guys who's actually runs my book publishing division now. He's a big kind of economic mind guy, and he was in the boat with me, and I wrote him and I said, "Oh my gosh, great news! There's somebody else that believes we're completely falling apart." And I sent I sent him another one. He said, "Oh, by the way, Merry Christmas." But he said just this last week, in one of the most amazing headlines I've ever seen, he said, right above Barack Obama saying, "I have fixed the economy," Rubini said, "The global economy is about to collapse in on itself." I'm like, oh, thank you, Mr. Sunshine and Lollipops, for stopping by.
Yeah, but seriously, what's 139 trillion among friends? I mean, it's not a quadrillion yet.
Wait, is that a real word? Because I always thought a trillion was a made-up word. Is quadrillion? What is the next number?
I don't know, dude. We keep making them up as we go.
I'm wondering when we get to a zillion. Won't that be cool? Decillion.
This next question is Beck University related, and keep in mind David Buckner has a class on Beck U. Beck U has a crest, but I am unaware of what imagery or colors, what they signify. Can someone please explain how that's been selected?
What? This is like I read something today. The Politico did a 4-page expose on what the political ties are to 828. And I'm like, good heavens, man. We've got the crime of the century happening in Washington, and they're worried about 828. All right, let me figure this out.
Give us all the conspiracy.
Here's the crest. The crest for Beck University. Does anybody know what the Latin says? It's Jefferson. What?
Harvard.
Oh, you can't see it? It says, rebellion against tyrants is obedience to God. I love the way MSNBC talked about this crest. The only thing they had was the tyrants, because it made it seem like a military installation, I guess, to them. Then they said it was a buffalo, a dead guy, and a feather. Technically, they're correct. Feather, obviously, is related to the founding documents. The dead guy is little-known figure in history, George Washington. And the buffalo is my favorite animal because it makes me think of America. It is a quintessential American animal. But I don't know if you know this. A buffalo can jump 6 to 8 feet. Did you know that? 6 to 8 feet. I know this because I was around a friend who has buffalo. And the fences are this tall. And I'm like, are you afraid the buffalo are going to fly out or what? He's like, don't screw with the buffalo. Don't let them hear you say that. They are an extraordinarily deceptive animal. That they're totally cool. You screw with them, look out. And the colors, I just thought they were nice colors. I didn't ask a color expert. I don't know, what does that color mean?
Our last question comes in from someone who's left themselves unnamed, and I think I know why. Can
yes,
we see
Keith
a
Olbermann, go ahead.
Can we see a reenactment of David Buckner fainting and Glenn watching?
You ready? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And you were standing over here. Yeah. So anyway, David, we have the
I'm gonna pass out. I'm passing out.
Thing over. Nice to see you.
I'm gone.
We have. Yes. Okay. We're gonna break for lunch. We're going to break for lunch, but after the break, we have a surprise for you, and Judge Napolitano is going to be here. He's in the house. And a lot more. And these guys,
But first,
there is a little contest you should know about. Comes to us from LDStravel.com. So before you go to lunch, it's a good thing to enter because we're giving it away today, and someone here is going to win it. So it is a trip to Israel for 8 days. You must be 21 or older to enter, and this is what you need to do. Text the word Beck to 801-411.
Wait a minute, we're still talking. Where are you guys going? Excuse us.
Hey, your seats.
Hey, we're talking down here. Hey, get your butts back in your seats.
How are they not turning around? We're screaming at them on microphone.
Here. Hey!
Thank you.
Man must be. They're hungry.
Well, the only one who listened to us just turned around and waved. That's not what we were asking. All right, so here's the contest again. Text the word Beck to 801-411. 801-411. Text the word Beck to that, and you'll be entered into trip to Israel from LDStravel.com.
Now you may eat.
Now get out of here.
Great. I'm over here. And we're live. Hi, Insider Extreme members. Scott Baker with you again. Backstage, this is fun and free form, and and we thought we're just going to drag the speaker. They've been up there, been laboring, sweating, pouring out their heart and soul, and we're going to come back and make him work even harder. And in fact, you understand this. The people in the hall can't see this, so you not only get to watch the whole American Revival, you get the bonus. So that was by the way, very powerful reenactment of the fainting scene.
Right? It worked out quite well, didn't it? Yeah. I haven't done that very often, only once before. So the rehearsal was good.
Well, I have something to tell you that you don't know, and that you and I are in a very exclusive fraternity. Because I'm a recovering TV news anchor, and in 1992, in front of a live audience, I passed out in prime time, cold. So
I'm feeling good already. We got a connection here, folks.
I don't know too many people in that club.
And you've not wanted to revisit that, have you?
No, I'm feeling okay.
Would you like to do it?
In fact, what I'm saying is to you Insider Extreme members, because you don't get lunch, because we just send everybody else out. One of the reasons to stay tuned right now is you just actually don't know, because these lights are kind of hot. You don't know what might happen here. So,
well, I feel honored to be a part of that. I'm doing well. Doing great. Feels good. Great people here in Salt Lake.
There's been 3 American revivals. Correct. And over a couple of months, the months have gone on. Has the message got more serious from you, do you think?
The timing is critical. When we started the message, the data was similar. And so sometimes you can change data, but nothing has transitioned. More importantly, the timing is critical because nothing's really transitioned to become better.
Right.
So as we start to move closer and closer and closer to this kind of precipice that we feel and experience, you're seeing right now an urgency out there that we haven't, even every single time we stop, there's a greater urgency.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, and people may wander by the way, and that's just, you just never know what's going to happen here backstage. For a talk on hope, it's pretty tough stuff there at the beginning, and it reminded me of a book I read a long time ago. I think it was called Learned Optimism, and optimism is sometimes different than hope. Right. But one of the things I remember the author saying is that you want a pessimist in the cockpit, that when the results could be catastrophic, physically, financially, you need to take a good hard look at reality. And in a way, isn't that what we need to get to hope, to get back to optimism? It takes a little bit of a realistic look at where we are.
The generation, let me go back just briefly to the gestation of this. Glenn turned to me and he says, I want you to do your economics. I want you to talk about where we are. I said, great. And he said, okay. And we had the 3 of us there in the room, and he said, okay, Dave, you got faith. And then he turned to me and he said, you got hope. I said, wait, you just said economics. Right. And so when we started looking at the economic, where are we going to get hope from this? So there was no delusion by which we were looking at this and saying, you know what, I can't speak of hope and where we are. It was all about truth. And so when you talk about a pessimist, I would say, and you alluded to it, a realist. Right. Somebody says, here is where we really are. Right. And knowing where we are empowers us. I mean, you go biblically, it's, you know the truth and it'll set you free. I mean, it's the concept that if you know where you are, now at least I know the lay of the land. Now I know what I can do to change. So hope comes from knowledge, not simply from wishful thinking. And I think that's the power of the hope message with economics.
Right. That's what I got from that, because it's like, it's not good enough just to be like, we believe. I mean, it's not, you don't want that pilot in the cockpit saying, we don't need to de-ice again. Yeah, I think it's going to be fine. No, you want somebody that's saying, all right, we're going to get this thing off the ground. You lay out some things for people at home, for business owners, and part of your challenge you laid out there was go and teach other people these things that you're hearing. And I remember somebody wise once saying that it's not just the reinforcement in your own memory if you leave a lecture or something like this and go and tell somebody else. It's that it makes you a teacher of that material. It makes you more likely to actually abide by those principles. Do you find that to be true?
Undoubtedly. And I have my children teach principles. We have this economic game that we play around the kitchen table with cookies. They teach opportunity cost. They teach comparative advantage. They now know it. Every time you can teach it, communicate it. I mean, much of what we're doing with Beck University is to get people to understand, if you can take this, now take the notes, go teach it to somebody else, it'll integrate into what you know, and you'll act on it. It won't be just something you felt and washed over you, but it's something you used because you went to someone else, and then that person, you challenge them. This kind of contagion is what we have to get. It can't be simply a ballot box moment. It has to be a contagious experience, and that's what happens.
You mentioned Beck University. Maybe let's talk about that a little bit, because the media has had fun, like saying, "Oh, Glenn's got his own university." But this is really part of we're taking steps in the way that we communicate. I remember I interviewed Glenn on a little live webcast that we did 3.5 years ago. We did it for 40 minutes. It was live, and at the end he said, "So when is this going to be on?" I was like, "It was just on. We were just live." He goes, "You can do that on the internet?" I was like, "No, you can do it. It's not just watching 3-minute little videos anymore. Things can be, deep and long, and this audience seems to like it." Where do you see Beck University going?
Well, if you look at just the power of this experience, there are people here that you're listening right now. You're getting information. Beck University provides for that. It'll help satiate some of that hunger. But what we're coming to find out, just from my experience, I've done my first of 3. And just from my experience there, we had 2,800 comments and questions come in. They're starving. So these are not people who are waiting for some kind of textbook to answer it. They're waiting. We are a real-time culture, and we are a real-time society. And Beck University provides that. The idea that you have a university is principled as the idea of you have an educational opportunity and experience. And so all the grief around whether this is formalized or informalized, this is giving information to people who are hungry for knowledge, so they make decisions on their own. Not simply putting out a product and say, "Will you buy this?" No, this is about understanding. So I see Beck University, or I see any kind of thing that may derive from this, as being opportunities for people to go, I've got a question. I want the answer. I want to answer it in real time. I don't want to Google it. Just let me hear. It's a powerful experience for people.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can hear, but they're shouting inside I don't know what they're excited about, but I think as I've been watching the numbers, I mean, because people watching on the internet, people change over. New people are watching. People watch earlier, but I think we have more people watching now than are live inside the stadium, and this really kind of creates a sort of a revolution in how we can get information out there, based on just the one that you've done. What kind of are you getting feedback? Are you? I mean, I heard you the questions,
right.
But
not only the questions, but then we have a 30-minute Q&A at the end, and so I'm answering a lot there, and then I'm directing them to opportunities. I have as many different resources as I can, as well as the Beck people are standing behind. They're going, "Ooh, let's put that in," and they're grabbing all the information they can.
But how does that compare to like the normal university classroom?
The power of this is I have a classroom of 50 to 100 at the university. Now I have a classroom of 4,000, and the questions are just as passionate and thoughtful. So you have the opportunity
from these people that don't go to Columbia, or,
insightful, truly committed to understanding more. And the beauty of that is it doesn't matter where you are. I had a woman who says, "I'm in Iowa or I'm in South Dakota. I can't get to any of these events." She's there and she's asking questions. I was answering the questions. She's, "Wow, I got an answer," and it's not having to wait for something to be mailed or sent. It's real time, and the power of real time is really, really something compelling.
what's you got the new book out, the available Amazon. Yeah,
it's on our website, buckneronbusiness.com. It's here in the venue. It's been a journey.
They're not in the venue, but they can go to Amazon.
buckneronbusiness.com, or they can go on to Barnes & Noble, or they can go on to Amazon, and it's available there. It's an opportunity to put together, I've taken 12 principles that say this is where policies are made that are contrary to economic principles. And people go, oh, that makes sense.
Who's this good for? Is it good for to give to somebody you know who's an entrepreneur, or is it
Sioux City, Iowa?
Or is it could be for
a dad who owns a small business? Right. This is for a kid in college. This is for anybody who says, why is it that when I'm listening to what they're doing, it doesn't make sense? Right. This helps them to say, this is why it doesn't make sense. And you were right. Your instinct, your insights, and your thoughts, you were right. It emboldens that person to say, oh, wait. So I don't just have to take from the Ivy League, and I'm proud to be part of a great institution with great professors. But the creative juices of somebody in small town America can say, makes sense to me. And that's the power of it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how you guys gauge it, but I'm feeling like this was a success because neither of us passed out.
We made it.
And but I have to keep going because we're gonna. In fact, I think Stu and Pat are going to stop by here in a little bit. But we appreciate you. You're going to be back up.
Keep up the good work, folks.
You're going to be back up with.
Back up for a Q&A with the judge and with Dave Barton. An opportunity to really field questions. Some coming from the internet, some coming from live here within the audience. It's a great opportunity to say, here's where we are, and here are steps we're taking. So it's an honor.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
A lot to think about, man, isn't it? Okay, more people walking by. Go ahead. All right, I could charge money for that, right? To get to you think they were waiting? They were very kind to wait. So how are you guys doing? I hope you're getting out a lot out of this. I've been getting texts and emails, and let's see. I think somebody just texted me. Yeah. Wait, you want me to pass out? I don't know about that. The morning has been great, right? Do you even, if you don't know, do you even know what to expect from Judge Napolitano? Do you even know what to expect from Glenn's closing today? I'll tell you that if it's anything like the talk that he gave here in Salt Lake City last night, there was a small gathering, a small group, not small. It was maybe 100 people at a very special fundraiser for the Special Ops Warriors Fund, and just fantastic. And I don't want to say that Glenn was sort of cranked up, but man, was he on fire. And he asked me afterwards, said, what did you think? And I said, I'm not sure I'm ready to talk about it yet. I was being honest with him. So I think if you haven't been to an earlier American revival, if you don't know what's coming up, it's going to be something fantastic. And that's at about 3 p.m. Will be the keynote speech, and I'm looking forward to Judge Napolitano. We're going to figure out a time to talk to Judge Napolitano in here, whether it's right. I think it might be, and I'm just going to lay this out here. Don't penalize me if I'm wrong. But after we talk to Pat and Stu, once they get over here, we'll let you guys have a little bit of a break, but then maybe a couple of minutes before the program resumes, we'll see if we get a word backstage here, with the judge. But Glenn hit a lot of the themes already that he's been able to stress in this talk last night, and I kept thinking about some of those things this morning. And he talked about that Purple Heart that he and David Barton were talking about. He talked about some of the things that he's been revealing to you about what's going on in this country, and kind of the corruption of values, a corruption even of theology. And these are what's interesting to me about this, and I think it says a lot about you. Think about the pressure on any media personality, any pastor, any writer to say, look, you can reach a broader audience. You can get bigger ratings if you just pander to them a little bit, if you just water it down, if you just make it easier. And I think what you've seen and what we know about you is that you are rising to the way above the levels of expectations. The deeper Glenn goes, the more he challenges you, the more that he says, go deep, read more, question more. You do. that's why we're excited that you're part of Insider Extreme, because it does show your commitment. It shows your level of saying it's not just enough now to be dissatisfied. It's not just enough to yell at your television set. If things are going to change, we have to change. And I'll be wanting you to think about this. For those of you who don't know me, by the way, I'm Scott Baker, and Pat and Stu, from the radio show, and they're out just talking to the audience for a couple of minutes. Then they're going to come back here and talk with us, a little bonus round for you guys. You may have seen me a couple of times on Glenn's TV show or on the radio show. I spent the last couple of years running a pretty big website called Breitbart TV. We did a lot of news videos that Glenn featured, and I was able to watch how news changed. We played 175 million video clips over the last 3 years on 30,000 handcrafted posts. And the more that we went along, the more Glenn and the team at Mercury and we were talking, and finally it just kind of became a thing where I said, you know what, I want to join you guys. And so I was able to come full time onto the Mercury staff just a month or so ago, and to do some of the same kinds of things that we've been talking about, to find new ways to communicate important truths using audio and video and text, and finding ways to communicate that. And what I just said to you about my respect for you and how you've gone deeper, the deeper Glenn has gone, and being willing to participate in an evolution of the way that we get this stuff out here, we're not quite done with you yet. And so we got some new things, kind of in the pipeline, and there'll be some things, maybe even before we even get to 828, where we'll be asking you to participate, and we'll be asking for your ideas and your feedback, and for you to continue to become part of this community, because I've even been excited to watch what happened with the addition of the feed on the webcast. For those of you who have been participating in the chat or watching it on the BCast website that I've done for the last couple of years with Liz Stevens, we've had chat up for the last year, and I was able to watch how that sort of revolutionized the feel of that show, and it allowed people to connect and to form friendships and to form insight, and for as hosts to see the feedback, and that's just one way. So it's as we've watched that, and as Jeffy's moderating the chat, and you're seeing that happen on Insider Extreme, that's exciting. But we're only scratching the surface here. So this is just my little pre-commercial to say, we're headed in some directions where we're going to be asking for your input, for your participation, and I think it's going to be pretty darn exciting. And I think that what you see here in the American revival, I'm going to be honest, there are some things that you sitting at home won't experience that the people do here in the hall. That's why you need to come to 828. At some level, there's nothing like being there, right? But there's people in the hall here that are missing some things that you're not getting at home, and both the backstage interviews and some of the extra, and who knows what will happen here with Pat and Stu in just a few minutes. These experiences are important because they're going to change us. They're going to change the way that we communicate, and I think that's it. What occurred to me, and see if this makes sense. This is what's being robbed from people in this country, as we talked about faith in that first hour. As Glenn was talking about why he has been talking so much about social justice. And remember, Glenn's been able to go after the Reverend Jim Wallace. I actually had to interview the guy. I had to spend 35 minutes with him in an interview. Somehow I survived that, but this was what I was thinking about this morning as David Barton was talking. One of the things that when I was trying to process what had happened in the interview that we did with Jim Wallace, and as we were putting together some materials that Glenn was able to use, I talked to a very wise writer that I know named Marvin Alasky, and a former card-carrying communist who finally in the early 70s realized that this was a bankrupt set of ideals. And he he said, well, you know what the problem? I said, what's the? And this is a guy who's debated Jim Wallace in various academic settings. I said, what really is the problem with social justice? And he said, did you know that when you look at in scriptures for where the word justice is involved as an admonition to people, follow this path, do justice, that the meaning of the word in most of these cases in the Greek or Hebrew involves the justice doer, the request to you to do justice, that action moves them toward God. It's a gift to them. It's a blessing to the person to whom justice has been done, but it's a spiritual gift to the person who moves towards God. And when you replace God with government, you can say, well, that's idolatry. But if social justice, if those actions take your money, give it to the government to fix some ill, well, then we've just robbed you. We've robbed you of that blessing, of that process of actually doing what justice means. And how can you hear David Barton and not think, man, have we gotten off track? Talk about getting off track. I think Stu has wandered up. I don't see Pat yet, but let's get Stu in here quick. Maybe we can get the real. How are you?
Hi, Scott. How are you?
Great. We were talking to David Buckner, and both he and I have passed out on live television, so we were having a fun little interview. But we could hear screaming going on in the hall. What exactly was? I'm scared to ask what was going on in there.
Well, there's a table of fudge brownies, and Glenn passed by it, which we were shocked to see. No, I don't know. Was there actually screaming? Was there potentially?
I heard shouting, and cheers and laughter. So I wasn't sure if you were not involved in whatever frivolity was going on in there.
No, I was thinking about the future of our republic, and I was thinking about what part we play. I didn't have time for fun and games
and all of that. No, not at all. And in fact, I know you were since you're busy working, with the crowd in there. You were like, thank God, here's the one day I don't have to do the fourth hour. But here I've dragged you back in.
Yes, very much. We're very pleased. We actually were thinking. Basically, you're looking out there at the audience, and there's a whole nother one of these arenas spread across the country right now watching, which is pretty exciting. And this is the sort of stuff that we need for the fourth hour. We need this sort of attention and love for the fourth hour as well.
Well, in fact, before you came up, I was talking about how much this says about this audience. It's bigger than the group that's inside, and that audience is changing over. It's probably been many times that throughout the course of the day, and these are people that could be doing chores or gardening or going to Home Depot or going to soccer games and whatnot, and they've somehow chosen on a Saturday to go, oh, let's sit here and think about deep academic thoughts about economics and history and philosophy. What have you learned in just doing the fourth hour since it started? How is that, from what you expected that fourth hour to be, how has it changed? How has it changed as the chat has come into it, too?
Well, it's a kind of a reflection of the audience. Like you said with this event, it's a Saturday. Like, you could be home doing something fun. And yet these people come here, and this is not it's not an easy event to ask people to attend. This is a workout. It's like 9 hours where everyone's sitting here and they're learning about from professors and everything else. This is the stuff that people go to college for. Beck University is a perfect name for it because it's hard. There's work there. Everyone, we were getting all the emails at revival@glennbeck.com, and I'd say 1 out of every 3 is, can David Barton speak any faster?
It's true.
It is. He unloads information on you, and it's one of those things where it's the same thing with the fourth hour. It's like we get to have a little bit more fun in the fourth hour. Where I think you need that because we're asking a lot out of the audience on an everyday basis. Glenn really does ask a lot, and then of course they get insulted with, they don't even read. It's like The Road to Serfdom is like a #1 bestseller. So I think they do read, and this shows here, between the insider and the people here, shows that they are willing to put the time in. They are willing to sit there for hours and hours on a day that they could just be relaxing. They could be, spending time with, friends and family, but they're thinking that, the country is kind of important, and maybe we should learn about where it was and where it's going.
Yeah. Apparently, these people are more dedicated than the people in the hall because apparently, when you and Pat started to talk, some people started to leave.
Do you believe that?
I know.
You know,
in the front.
They were leaving our country. No, yeah, it was funny because it's one of those things that
they're hungry,
right? Because we think here, and this is the 4th hour, and also the Glenn Beck program. One of our standard ways to communicate with the audience is by berating them. So we think that's for some reason a positive marketing tactic. But it was funny because we started screaming at them, and they, just obviously making fun of the fact that they were leaving in the middle, before the show was over. Yet they didn't stop. There was no point where they turned around and acknowledged us or decided that they wanted to stay in their seats. They were so like, I have to get to the bathroom before anyone else. I just sat through Glenn blabbing on, and then David Buckner, and then Glenn blabbing on more. I need to get to the bathroom before this. So, look, there are priorities: God, family, country, bathroom. You got to organize those however you can.
Excellent. So, and in case you have to attend to any of those things, we'll let you do that. But what you've gone 3 of these as they've evolved. What do you? Glenn keeps dropping these sort of I can't even tell you what's going to happen at 8:28. It's like I can't even. Can you tell us anything? I mean, just
well,
it's just us.
We're actually that's kind of the point. I mean, I shouldn't be telling you this, but this is the point where Glenn is going to announce his public support of Barack Obama and his policies. He thinks it's about time to let the cat out of the bag. He's just been setting you up.
We need to come together,
and we need to just support socialism. I mean, it's not that bad. How bad could it be? No, I think it is one of those things because I was talking to David Barton just a minute ago. And this is what happens.
He's such a nasty guy when he's off stage. Really, it's just talk about a 180.
What a jerk! No, I mean, you're talking to him, and it's like, David Barton's out there. He's trying to tell people about the history of our country. And we're talking about the founders and their principles. That shouldn't be really a controversial topic. Right. Yet, he comes on and he talks to Glenn Beck, and that makes it immediately he gets hammered even more than normal. And, a lot of the people that we're going to be doing stuff on 828 with are not, David can handle it. He's been doing it for a long time. But a lot of these people who are coming on 828 are just, regular people. They're people who are in the military, who've had great achievements and, and great courage. And it's like, well, do they need to get beat up, for month after month after month? It just seems unfair. So Glenn's trying to keep it as under the cover as possible, but he always winds up running his mouth at some point.
So at some point this will happen, you think? We're going to be things will be leaked on the show over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, if you were watching just in there, he goes. Now I don't want to announce this. I haven't announced this yet, but 827 is going to be blah blah. And I'm like, you just announced it. You just did it. So he'll be giving. He always leaks out details. He just has no ability to hide. To keep secrets. He has no ability to do.
Well, I told them if his closer today is anything like the talk that he gave at the fundraiser last night, whoo boy. So that'll. So that's a reason to stay tuned here this afternoon. But he's not kidding. There may be 1 or 2 little surprises here this afternoon. Things people aren't expecting yet. Is that true?
Oh yeah, it's definitely true. He's got a few tricks up his sleeve still to come. We kind of went over some of the speech and stuff, when we were on the plane and everything else, and it's great stuff. It really is great stuff. And, the judge is coming up, too, which you got to see the reaction of the judge. This guy drives the crowd crazy. He's like Justin Bieber. It's ridiculous. He is a superstar.
So, will they scream more for him than they did for Congressman Chavitz?
I don't know. Gosh,
standing ovation.
Yeah, I think if there was an election here, he might get reelected. If this was the audience, he's doing very well among the Glenn Beck P1s, as it were.
All right, we'll take a break at lunch. We'll see you this afternoon. All right, indeed. Okay, Insider Extreme members, I think we have pummeled you with enough additional information for now, and because we have to, it's like you see all of these hardworking people back here. I mean, there's a lot to get to this afternoon. They need a little bit of a break. We're going to power down the lights. We're going to make sure the stream is up and running, and so I think whether we come on a couple minutes, before the program restarts with Judge Napolitano, we'll get to him at some point and have a lot more fun this afternoon. Scott Baker with you backstage. We'll be back in a little while. Enjoy the break and leave the stream going. We'll be back.
Presented hope. And then it came to me, what is hope? My good friend John Huntsman Sr., he is hope to me. He is hope. He up on the hills here, up on the benches, he has his cancer institute. And right in front of it is the street is the Circle of Hope. Why? Why? Because they give you the truth there. You may not survive, but your best chance is to address it now. Truth is hope. If I go to a cancer center and they tell me, oh, don't worry about it, he's got lung cancer, it's just a little cough, I'm going to die. That's false hope. We have a challenge right now as Americans. We say over and over again, just tell us the truth. They say you can't handle the truth. They say, well, you'll never vote for him if it's the truth. Well, you have to be optimistic. Here's why I'm optimistic. I know who Americans are. I know our history. I know what we have built. I know in the darkest hour, every single time when it gets really bad, that's when the Americans show up. That's when we show up. That's when we say, all right, we'll fix it. That's where our hope comes from. My hope comes from you. My hope is based in our history. But we have to know how bad it is. And gang, I have news for you. It is awful. I've been saying this now for I don't even know how many years, 4 years. I begged people. I remember it was a day of the stock market. It was like $13,998. And I had some clown on TV who was like, oh, we're looking at a Dow 20,000. I don't know why you're so down on it. And I looked right in the camera and I said, please, dear God, get your money out of the stock market. This is bogus. I can't. You did, God bless you. I can't tell you how many people come up to me now and say, Glenn, thank you. But I got hammered for it. Hammered. My ratings went down. Nobody wanted to watch it. I got news for you, gang. We all have to stand up and tell the truth. We hope that we're wrong, but we tell the truth no matter how uncomfortable it is, because that's the only thing that will save us. We're worried about deflation now. Most people don't even know what that is. Most people have denied that it was. The president just last week said, my policies have gotten us past the worst. Oh, dear God, help us. The worst is in front of us. It is in front of us. And I'm going to tell you in the last part of the message tonight who you are. It gave Americans the opportunity to have phones, refrigerators, and cars for the first time. So, 1920s, here we are. 1920s, things are really horrible because Woodrow Wilson. And it starts to come up in the 1920s. And then Hoover comes in and we start to do all kinds of programs. And what happens is it comes down because this is, have you ever heard of green shoots? Oh, the green shoots in the economy, they're great. Springtime, green shoots, summer, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall, winter. It's a cycle. And if you look at it, 1929, here comes the Great Depression, lasts a little longer because 1949, 46 to 49, it starts to come back up. 1969, we enter our summer period. And then 1997, we start coming down. 2008, we start to crash. Here we are now. And this relies on us now because we have come off this Kondrackian wave. But his theory was, what happens is it's just a cycle. It goes through periods. And there is winter when it seems horrible, seems like it will never end. You should live back east. It never ends. Everything is gray, everything is bleak, everything is awful. Awful, cold. And that is the depressionary period. That's the part where everybody feels like I believe we're about to feel. That's winter. And then all of a sudden you see one thing, a spark. It's called a green shoot. And you're like, oh my gosh, look at that. And it takes off, and that spreads all across the economy. And it's a time of optimism. You're like, oh my gosh, it's a time of ideas. It is in time, 1949, what were we doing? We were building cars, we were inventing, we were building homes, we were building refrigerators. It was a time of expansion. The same as the 1920s. It is spring. Then you reach a period of summer, and arrogance sets in because you've had spring and now you're in summer. Have you ever gotten to the point in summer you're like, oh, jeez, this is never going to end? It's a summer, the period of arrogance, where we're America. Nothing will stop us now. We cannot fail. It will always be sunshine. Summer. And then you start to see the leaves change. And somebody says, wow, it's going to get cold. The leaves are changing. No, it will always be summer. No, but all the leaves are changing. There's something wrong with the trees then. We should dig them all up and put them in greenhouses. No. You should recognize that the time to prepare is coming. You should prepare for cold weather. Because what's happened is we had this great growth, and then we became arrogant, and we made mistakes because we were arrogant. Things change. Things that were good ideas no longer work anymore, and they start to shimmy apart. And what happens? This is what he told Stalin.
You, me, a growing army of Americans who have discovered that the flame of hope still burns in the hearts of the like-minded. Americans who still swell with pride when the stars and stripes are raised and our nation's anthem is sung before the cry of "Play ball!" People who believe America is not just a country but an ideal, not perfect, but better than any other, and founded in righteousness, truth, honor, courage. People who have hope that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness will be just as relevant for their children and grandchildren as it is for them today. Hope. It's the tiniest spark that can change a life. Country. Make no mistake, it is time for change. It's time for the hope of a nation to trounce the partisan politics of Washington, D.C. It's time we choose our leaders based on who they are and what they stand for, and not what party they're from. It's time, right now, for true Americans to give strong, full-throated voice to the real hope of this country, not the empty, false hope of a campaign slogan, but a loud cry for a return to our core, our foundation. Because, with all due respect, Mr. President, we're just not interested in fundamental transformation, social justice, spreading the wealth, universal health care, socialism, Marxism, or any other ism, or a series of stimulus packages that will rob our children of any chance, any hope of an America as it was intended. Restoration, Mr. President, is our hope. Before it's too late. Restoration of our values, the principles, the integrity, the honor, the freedom that defines who we are, who we have always been. America, the beautiful, the land of the free, the home of the brave, a shining beacon for all the world to see. That is our hope. That is the promise and hope of America.
When I first painted these paintings, not that particular one, but when I first painted Faith, Hope, and Charity that you see on the set every day, I didn't know what they were going to be used for. I didn't know what they were for. It was over the holidays. And I I had to find somebody that represented hope. And I didn't know who and why I'm telling you these things. You are going to feel overwhelmed in this next section. It's so funny that this section is called hope, because you're going to get to the end of it, you're going like, okay, I think I'm going to go hang myself now. You're going to feel, you don't know, my wife, I swear to God, my wife will be in bed and she'll say, what are you thinking about, honey? And I'm like, honey, I just, and I'll go on for like 20 minutes, and then I'll say, good night, I'll turn off the light, and she'll be sitting up in bed. God bless her. God bless her. You don't know what it's like living with me. It's a nightmare. All right, let me tell you, there's two theories of thought. One theory is, hey, you know what? When things get bad, here's what you do. You spend your way out of it. Woo-hoo. There is something to be said for that in the short term, and in, just kind of prop it up just a little bit if you got something, and just pop the clutch a little bit, maybe. But not when things are spiraling out of control. Me personally, I say let it go. For one reason. I happen to know of a guy named, I don't know, Kondratiev is they spell his name in the history books like 14 different ways. He's a guy who was an economist for Stalin. And Stalin said, so, tell me, before I suck the blood out of everyone, tell me, which system is better, communism or capitalism? This dope apparently didn't recognize he was being asked that question by Stalin. I think the question is, whatever one you're for. He said, let me think about it. He did. He studied. He came back with what he calls the Kondratiev wave. To me, the Lord's house is a house of order. Everything is a pattern. Everything is a pattern. You see patterns in everything. See if you recognize this pattern as winter, spring, summer, and fall. He came back to Stalin and he said, you know what? I have an answer for you. Let me explain. I call it the Kondratiev wave. If you look at 1929, anybody heard of the 1920 Depression? Yeah, a few people. You never heard about it, you never read about it in school, I can guarantee you that. If you heard about it, you're either really super, super smart or you heard it from our show. The Depression of 1920 was just as bad as 29. But you don't hear about it. Why? Because Coolidge and Harding, they said, you know what we should do? Cut taxes and cut spending by 50%. And they did. They did. And a little thing called the Roaring Twenties happened. Oh, it was so horrible.
Hope. The parent of both faith and charity. According to the Bible, it's the light in a world that sometimes can be dark and a difficult place. Without hope, without that glimmer of faint light shining through even the bleakest of times, we die. Hope, our eternal flame, the smallest of its optimistic sparks, can ignite an inferno, create civilizations, defeat the deadliest of diseases, the longest of odds. It is the fuel of our faith and the foundation of our charity. But for hope to be real, it must be based in truth, honor. Without it, hope is nothing more than an empty wish. Truth, honor, virtues that today, right now, seem to be in very short supply. Truth, honor. Our history is chock full of brilliant men and women whose integrity and courage gave birth to this glorious republic. Men and women whose actions radiated hope throughout this great land of ours. But where have they gone? Where is George Washington or Sam Adams of our generation? Where is another Thomas Jefferson or Abraham Lincoln? What has happened to truth? Honor. Too often today, conversations in the White House or the halls of Congress are absent of any mention of the founders, any reference to the mandates of the Constitution. Too often, the insight of Washington, Adams, or Jefferson is being equally substituted for the honorless rhetoric of Geithners, the Dodds, Wrangels, and Franks. Truth, honor, replaced with corruption, scandal, and deception. In America today, would anyone disagree that if we judge by the actions of our leaders, the light of hope is quickly dimming? Optimism, tougher and tougher to muster as the proud country of our founders, the Constitution, the American way, seems to be slipping from our grasp. But wait, our hope is not lost. We, the people, are waking up. America is waking up. We now realize what fundamentally transforming America really meant. That the change we were promised is not the change that we need. That our founders created a republic and a document in the Constitution that has, does, and will stand the test of time. It's not transformation that we need, but restoration. And while we may not have been that giant beacon of hope like Washington or Jefferson to light the darkness and guide our path, we have each other